Hello everyone. Today I'll be talking about efficient method to search for strongly lensed gravitational wave events. This was a project I did with Srishti Goyal, who was a PhD student here a couple of years ago, and Ajit. So since this is an astro talk, let's begin with some pretty pictures. Here is a picture taken by the Hubble Space Telescope of some field of the sky. And you can see that almost every bright spot, almost every, what is,
No, 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 really, really.
okay? Fine. Almost every bright spot here is a galaxy. And what you see weird is in the middle here. There are some of these yellowish galaxies, and then this golden stuff is sort of smeared around it. So what is happening is that these things are closer to us, and then the golden ones are behind, and the light from them is bent by these things to lead to a phenomenon called strong gravitational lensing. The same thing appears multiple times. So this paper analyzed that all these things are the same object in the background. So here is a side view. There is a source, it is emitting radiation, and a massive object along the line of sight is bending the path. The source could be anything really. So in this case, it is actually a binary black hole, which is emitting gravitational radiation, and that can also get bent, leading to multiple images. So why is this interesting? So the first thing to note, a big difference from the EM side, is in the gravitational lensing case, we cannot resolve the images in the sky. So this was an event which came a few days ago. And what is shown is on the sky, you unwrap it and project. What is the probability that the event came from this patch of the sky? And you can see that it's a really big patch. What this is saying is that maybe the event was in this like large chunk of sky. So you can't really pinpoint it, unlike EM. So if you were to see a typical lensed event on this, it will be smaller than a single pixel. There is no hope for identifying these lensed events purely from their image separation and some smearing kind of effect to GW data anytime soon. But what we can do is resolve it in time. So you remember this picture? Well, what it means is that these paths now have to bend around a massive lens, which means they have to incur a time delay. So instead of a single unlensed image, you will get multiple images, which will have a time delay with respect to the unlensed image and with respect to each other, which is very important. And their amplitude may also increase due to magnification. And there are also other effects which are similar to EM. For example, the image could be inverted, and they encounter different noise relations. So why bother studying all this? Well, so there are many applications. I'm going to talk about one, which is very interesting, and it was developed here at ICTS. So lensing depends on the lens, right? Obviously. And lenses are mostly collapsed matter. I mean, what were all these things? There were galaxies, which were baryons and dark matter, which collapsed to form some structure. And if you have more matter, there will be more collapse, and these collapsed objects will be more massive, they will be bigger. And the bigger they are, the more time delays they will give, because you have to bend around more. So if you could measure these lensing time delays, you could measure the matter content of the universe. Not only that, you can also measure the expansion rate and some other structure formation parameters. So this was part of Shouvik Jana's work. And this really gives you a simple way of measuring the universe using just time delays of lensed events. But in order to do that, you need to be able to find these images in the data first. And that's what this project is about, how to find lensed images in the data. So the scenario is this: we have some N detections, which are spread across a year or two. The actual events are very short. They are one signal or so long. So you have large separation between these events. And there will be NC2 pairs. And we have to basically go to each pair and check if it is consistent. So this consistency, I'm going to just call it a base factor BLU. What it is, I will explain soon. And the statement is that you come up with one number per pair. Like you take the data, do some processing on it to get this one number. If it is large, it is consistent. If it is small, it is not consistent with lensing hypothesis, you reject it. There is a fully mathematical, the Bayesian way in my title to do this, and that looks like this. It's complicated, but what I'm going to do is give three basic pieces which go into this, the three pieces of consistency that we check for. So the first one is really simple. I mean, if you have two events for which so you take the data and you infer what the signal could have been, the source could have been. So if you infer a source mass for the two signals, and it is consistent versus it is not consistent. For example, there is no source mass in the right-hand picture, which is common between the two signals. Whereas in the left-hand picture, there is this little patch which is common between the two. So this one is definitely not lensed because lensing is of the same source, right? So if the source is not common between them, even after accounting for noise, it can't be lensed. So that's the first thing you check for. This directly extends also to the sky patch I was saying. Well, we can't pinpoint it, but if this source's blob was here and this other source's blob was here, it is also not consistent. If the blobs are overlapping, it's consistent. The second piece of information is that, well, I told you that there is a magnification, right? So it makes the images appear closer or farther from you than they actually are because they are brighter, so you think they are closer to you. And then in that case, if you directly apply this logic that distances should be consistent, it won't work. So you have to somehow demagnify it by using some prior knowledge. So we think that most of these lenses should be galaxies because that was, yeah.
You can ask the questions after the talk is over.
Right. So we have some knowledge of what the lenses are like. So we can do some analysis before we get data to find out what their relative amplifications will be. And it turns out that if this relative magnification is more than 10, it is very unlikely that this is a lensed event. So we have some idea of how much magnification there should be. So we can use that information to demagnify the signal and then check for consistency like before in the intrinsic parameter case. The third piece of information is also something very simple as such. So let us consider that this is the parameter space. So here I'm showing it in terms of the black hole mass. So this is binary black holes merging, right? So the color here, how dark the color is represents how much likely it is that you get a source with this mass. So this patch is much more likely than the rest of the thing. Now consider what happens when you see two pairs here. They are both consistent, equally consistent, but this pair occurs in a region which is already very likely versus this pair occurs in a region which is less likely to occur intrinsically. So, well, this was already very likely and you found another one there. This was less likely and still you found another pair which was close to it. So this is far less likely to be actually to be unlensed. So an example is, if you go out and you just just randomly pick two people, if their height is similar, will you call them twins just by that factor? Well, if the height is similar and it is between 5 to 6 feet, they are very less likely to be twins because most humans have a height between 6 to 7 feet. But what if you are out there and you found two people whose height is between 7 to 8 feet and it is very similar? Then they are very likely to be twins because that is already less likely and you found two of them. So that's the same factor here. These are the three main pieces of information which go into this thing. And using that, we can now check how good we are at identifying lensed events and weeding out not lensed events. So this is a plot which does all that. So the way you read this is, so on the x-axis is the significance of detection. You guys might have read these papers that say, we have rejected this hypothesis, or we have confirmed this hypothesis with 5 sigma, 3 sigma. That sigma is on the x-axis. Here it goes up to 2.25 sigma. On the y-axis is our chance of detection. It is, we will find everything at no significance because, well, that's how it goes, right? And the higher significance you want, the less likely you are to detect that thing because noise makes things appear less significant. The more significant you want something, the less efficient you will be. And on the y-axis is that efficiency as well as the chances of our chances of being able to identify a lensed event. So there was a previous method which, instead of using all three pieces of information, used only one. And so they were far less efficient at finding things. Whereas after using everything in this work, we are almost twice as efficient at high significances. So the final statement is that at current scenario, we have about a 13% chance of detecting a lensed event in O4A data using this method, which was earlier only 7% or so. So the conclusion is that I told you that strongly lensed GWs, if you want to look for them, you need to check for consistency in three things. And there is a fully Bayesian approach of doing this, of which there are three main pieces of information, which is consistency in intrinsic parameters, biased parameters, and the population. Compared to previous work, it is now twice as likely that we will be able to detect lensing at 2.25 sigma significance, at least. And I only told you one application, but there are all these other applications which are now possible with this. Thank you. So you had a question.
Yeah, Vitarth.
When you say end detections,
Yeah.
are you do you mean end detection from different detectors across the globe, or what do you mean by end detections?
So in GWs, the detectors are, well, when they are on, they are always watching the entirety of the sky. So yes, when I said end detections, whatever detectors are running at that time, they are detecting things. So N across the whole thing. There is no like telescope-like thing. It's not watching in a particular patch. It just always sees everything. Think of it more like a microphone.
Any other questions? Abhinav.
So when you said that there is 13% chance that we detect such a lensing event, you mean that given that that happens, lensing is happening, that we have 13%?
No, given that it happens, it is 65%. The chance of it happening was already small. That was 20% only.
Oh, okay.
And yeah,
I see.
we are not doing that badly. It's just 13. Yeah.
Any other question? If not, I would like to thank Ankur for such a wonderful talk.